Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Miss Dr. Kenya. A couple of months ago, I did a feature on social media. So first and foremost, if you're not following me on social media, you might not understand some of the conversations that we're having here on YouTube. But ultimately, the conversations that we have on YouTube are meant to be deeper dive conversations based upon the feedback that I get from my social media accounts. And I'm Miss Dr. Kenya on all socials. So not too long ago, I did a feature, for lack of better words, talking about the different ways that people cope. And while some people cope with journaling and meditation and yoga and walks, some people choose simply to feel good in the moment, and that's okay. One of the ways that people choose to feel good in the moment is through sex. And so I have invited someone whose opinion and thoughts I definitely respect. I have been following her myself for quite some time and have interacted with her. And so when I got the feedback from parents in reference to Miss Dr. Kenya, how on earth do we go there and have conversations with our children and our youth about sex? I felt like I would invite an expert on to talk about it. I am not the expert on sex. I am the expert on mental health and having tough conversations and doing deeper dive conversations, but I am not the expert on sex. However, we have an expert in the room. So I want to stop and introduce you guys to this month's guest of Miss Dr. Kenya. She is Dr. Donna, is how we will refer to her. Pronouns, she, they, doc, and goddess, just to let you know who we working with, y'all. So, Dr. Donna Oriowo is an LICSW and CST, an award-winning diversity, equity, and inclusion advocate, international speaker, and certified sex and relationship therapist in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Dr. Donna is the owner of her own private practice, a non-right, which specializes in working specifically with Black women on issues related to colorism and texturism and their impact on mental and sexual health. She specializes in helping Black women feel free, fabulous, and fucked. Dr. Donna is the author of Cocoa Butter and Hair Grease, a self-love journey through hair and skin, and the host of a community space for Black women called In My Black Feelings. And I'm hoping that Dr. Donna is going to talk about the feelings chart that goes along with that because it is really, really awesome. She collects inspiring quotes, eats donuts, loves pasta, travels to learn, gives COVID-safe handshakes, warm rugs, and figuratively knocks on the head. Dr. Oriowo served as DEI co-chair and communication steering committee chair for the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists, also known as ASECT. She is a member of the Women of Color Sexual Health Network, and she can be found on social media by her name at Dr. Donna Oriowo. Or you can visit her online at donnaoriowo.com or interact with her by joining her online on Facebook, her community, Free, Fabulous, and Fucked. With that, Dr. Donna, welcome. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I am doing A-okay. I'm feeling quite content.
I can tell. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Um, Again, I didn't want to misinform the people and tell them what I thought when I knew that there was an expert who could do a much better job than I could. So thank you for taking some time out of your day to have this conversation with our children and youth, with our parents, to kind of help answer some of the questions that they've been sitting with. So thank you. I do appreciate your time and your willingness to support the Miss Dr. Kenya audience.
Thank you for having me, and I'm ready.
All right, so we're gonna go there. My
Let's
first
go.
question is, like, how did you get into all the things? How did your journey from social work, because LICSW stands for Licensed Independent Clinical Social Worker. So how did your work in the social work area or industry or field, whatever you want to call it, lead you to making these connections between colorism and texturism and their impact on mental and sexual health?
Mm. I would say for me, it was actually the opposite.
Ah,
Sexuality led me to social work. So there I was in my, I don't know, junior, senior year at Morgan State University, getting my my bachelor's in psychology. I just knew that psychology was it for me. I was just like, yeah, this is it. This is great. And I remember watching Meet the Fockers and saw that one of the main characters was a sex therapist. And I was just like, is this real? Because if it is, please give me a job. Because at that point, people kept telling me they business, right? I don't know, something about the face, maybe that just has people opening up, but specifically to bring their relationship concerns, their
mm,
sexuality concerns. And I'm looking like, well, I know what you know. We both had the same sex ed. So I know I needed to learn more. And I did learn more so that I could have more fruitful conversations with the people that were coming my way. Um, but ultimately, I was looking for schools like, where can I learn more about sexuality? Where can I, what work do I need to do to be a sex therapist? That led me to the ASECT website. At the time, ASECT, the certifying body for sex therapists, had a program at the school that I went to.
mm.
So I was like, well, it's either this or Teach for America. Those were my options for when I graduated. So I put in my application for Widener. I put in my application for Teach for America, and I was just like, all right, let's see which one pans out. And since I got into both, I went ahead and chose to go to Widener and get my education there. And it was because I got into Widener. One of my professors at the time, he suggested that instead of going the PsyD route, that I go the social work route. I'm like, this man with a PsyD is telling me go social work. He's just like, it's faster, it costs less, you still get the same stuff, and you get a more holistic view, which is what he was saying at the time. I understand now that, the way that all of the programs are working now look a little bit different. But that was what was suggested to me. So I decided to, all right, let me look into that. So I ended up doing a dual degree program. So I was in the sexuality field and the social work field at the same time. So
Mm.
I graduated with my master's in both in 2012. And then I decided to go back to school and finishing at the PhD in sexuality. And I finished that in 2016.
Wow, that is amazing. So ultimately, what I heard you say is you didn't go looking for to learn more about sex and sexuality. It came looking for you. So like this is literally your calling, for lack of better words. Like I heard you say that people would just come up to you and naturally share with you all the things that they were struggling with, specifically in that particular area. And you, I'm assuming because you're a social worker, clearly you have a servant's heart. You decided, well, let me learn more about this so that when the people come, I can give them an informed decision. I think that's amazing. I think that's
I
amazing.
think it was unexpected. I think my parents wanted a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer.
Okay.
And they got a sex therapist. So I mean, I feel like we all won in some ways, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I heard you say Dr. Donna, did I not? They got a doctor.
Yeah, that's not the what that was not what they was expecting. You and I both know that.
They're looking for that medical doctor.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
like, I don't even like blood. That was never gonna work out.
Girl, let me tell you something. I explore all of those things, and like you, ultimately I ended up going into the social work route. I actually do have my PsyD, love the degree. I think that it helped me to understand the role of biology in human behavior, but definitely social work is the route to go. And I think that our work is just as important and powerful as medical doctors. There is no health without mental health in my world, but I'm very biased. So
No, I agree with you. I think that we saw the effects of that in 2020,
Oh my
right?
God.
Like it was save the body, forget the mind.
Yeah.
Like, oh, stay at home so you don't get sick, but people were literally losing it at
Yes.
home, didn't
Yes.
know how to function being at home. So for me, I'm like, well, for me in my house,
Right.
I want to, if we're going to save something, let's save them both,
Yeah.
but recognize that there is no life that you are living without your mind.
Yeah. So, Dr. Donna, what do you think is the one thing that people misunderstand the most about sex and sexuality? I think maybe that is the question, right? Like I think that we throw terms together that are closely related but not the same. Can you break those things down for us?
I think that a lot of people think that sex and sexuality are synonymous and they're not.
Right.
Sex is very simple. It's what you do. In some cases, it means male, female, right? So it's what gonads, what bodily chromosome, whatever you were born with,
Right.
male, female, sex. But sex is also an activity. It's something that you do with somebody. And there are a finite number of ways to have sex because you got a finite number of body.
Right.
Right. So the body is limited, and in that way, so too is the sex. Now, you can lick everything, you can touch everything, you can kiss everything. Cool. You can stick things in places if you want to stick things in places and figure out what titillates and stimulates and make you feel great. And that's great, but you still got a finite number of body. Sexuality is infinite.
Mm,
We're talking about the what you do being compared to the who you are, not the same.
right.
Sexuality is who we are from birth till death. We are sexual beings from birth to death. Some people say from the cradle to the grave. However you want to say it, the point is that your sexuality, it encompasses who you are and how you show up, how you talk to that person that you looking like, yeah, they cute over there, right? It encompasses what helps you to feel cute at your cutest,
Yeah.
at your most sexy, and it requires a certain level of vulnerability. It encompasses the self-esteem. It is, quite frankly, who you are
Yeah.
and the way that you show up, the way that you are received, and the way that you receive the way that other people receive you.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
also very meta.
So sexuality then is an expression of self.
Yeah.
Okay. Why do you think that that is so misunderstood and or demonized? I wish I could find a better word.
Oh,
But
demonized works because it is.
yeah, I feel like people are so afraid that if I express my sexuality different from how you express yours, then one of us has to be wrong. And I'm
Mm.
just trying to figure out how, first of all, how does my sexuality offend you, right? Because what I'm doing and how I'm showing up in the world is all up on me and how I choose to present myself. But I'm finding, especially as I have conversations with our youth, especially, that they find that their expression of their sexual selves, their sexuality, offends other people. What do we need to do to help people to become comfortable with all of the expressions of sexuality? Like you said, sexuality, how you express yourself is infinite. Like there are so many different possibilities. And it's okay. How do we get people to that point from your perspective?
Ooh. I
Well,
feel
that's
like
a
this
loaded
is about
question.
to
I
be
didn't.
very unpopular opinion, but I'm going to share it anyway. We get people
Okay.
to mind their business.
Oh,
Um, I think that people have erroneously been led to believe that your lack of understanding of something means that you cannot respect it.
oh my God. That's a
And
word.
so they are fighting against, well, I don't understand why you would do that. You don't need to,
Amen.
right? You are you, and you've been you for your entire life. You are never going to be anybody else. You are never going to be able to wear their skin. You're never going to be able to think their thoughts, right? You're never going to be able to potentiate their potential. It's not possible. You can only be you.
Right.
And if you know how to be you, and if you didn't stop yourself from being you, you wouldn't be so busy. stopping others from being who they are. There is no right or wrong as long as no one is being harmed. And you're not being harmed because somebody is not being you. You're being selfish. You're being self-centered, right? And generally speaking, I would say that someone has usually some level of vested interest in controlling someone else, right? So the powers that be, they love us to be in a specific type of relationship because there's more control in those type of relationships than there are in others, right? We're very much into the coupling off of people, right? Like you're a valuable person once you're a person who gets married. And I'm not saying that marriage is not valuable, but people who are married are not more valuable than people who are not married.
Right.
But when you are focused only on getting married, you leave friendships by the wayside. You stop being an integral part of your community because you're only interested in being someone's partner. And that person's job is to be your end all be all. And now you're both exhausted, right? Because we are sustained by a group of people and we're trying to sustain ourselves on one.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, between this and the lack of education that we get about sex and sexuality in general, right? It's very easy to take the thing that you don't know about, the thing that you do not understand, and the thing that you are too scared to say that you don't know enough about, and demonize it instead of spending some time and trying to figure out the who, what, when, where's, and whys, specifically the whys. Why are you threatened by someone else having sexuality that is different than yours? Some people will say, oh, well, religiously, I'm looking out for I don't want my child or whomever to face eternal damnation, but your child is willing to take the risk if it means that they get to be themselves in this lifetime. Why do you get to stand and tell them no? Right?
Yeah.
Why do you think of your child as your property who should live your life through them? I'm like, a kid is a person, but they don't belong to you. You help create them, but their life becomes their own. And I think that part of the problem is some of us are trying to live our lives through others. Another part of the problem is that we are served by how other people live their lives. So we are trying to deter them from living their lives for them, and so that we can continue to reap the benefits of how we want them to live. And quite frankly, if you have denied yourself the fullness of the life that you could have lived, we are often then we turn ourselves into the police officers of somebody else's life to stop them from living how they want to live. Because their thing didn't threaten you. Maybe you lose out on some of the stuff that you wanted, right? Like, tea time, a little bit of my tea. My parents want me to have kids. And I get it. These genes should not be wasted. The face card does not decline. And yet, regardless of whether or not I'm married, and I am, we don't want kids. So they're not getting grandkids, not from me, which means for them, that is something to mourn. And I think that sometimes we forget the part where we just need to learn to let go and mourn the thing that we're not getting from that other person, because sometimes you ask, but sometimes the answer is no. I hope that answers the question.
It did. And I'm trying to think of my follow-up question and my pivot without this turning into a 4-hour conversation, because both of our time is limited and I have so many questions just based upon that one thing. I do, though, want to kind of pivot to what I opened up with, and that is parents being able to have this conversation with their children, right? An open, honest dialogue about where you are, how do you experience yourself, how you express yourself, and most importantly, how can I support you in the healthy expression of that thing? Um, how do parents even approach this conversation with their children? Should they approach the conversation with their children? Like, how do parents have a conversation with their children? And I want to emphasize children. Let me get on my soapbox real quick.
How old are we talking?
That's exactly what my point is. Do I highly recommend that you do not wait until you think that your child is a sexual being to approach this conversation. If you have waited until your child is older, you've missed the window of opportunity to have a conversation with your child. I feel like the conversation, honestly, around sex and sexuality begins literally at birth. I'm talking about when you are potty training your child to use the proper names of body parts. Let's not be cute with it. Let's not come up with little nicknames. Let's be open and honest about what the name of that body part is. It's okay to say vagina. It is not a cuss word. It is okay to say penis. It is not a cuss word. I think that that conversation starts at the beginning, but I recognize that that's hard for a lot of parents. But I do think that we need to start to have the conversation around sex and sexuality as soon as possible, as early as possible, because children, and I do mean children and not teenagers, are having sex earlier and earlier, believe it or not. So as a parent, do not put off having the conversation because you feel uncomfortable.
Mm. I like
But
to tell people that you can put it off if you want to. It just
right,
means that you won't be the first one to have the conversation with them. They
exactly.
will learn and they will grow without you. When you create a gap in knowledge, children feel it. They simply feel it, sometimes with fantastical nonsense. Sometimes they fill it with things they saw on TV, and you have to determine whether or not you want TV and they little friends to be the one to give them the knowledge. Because if that's not what you're looking for, then that means that your mouth needs to be open. It means that the door to having the conversation must be open. So you ask the question of when they should have the conversation. I agree with you. Does the child have words? Then you need to be having a conversation. So while you're teaching them, this is your eyes, this is your nose, then you need to say, this is your vulva, these are your toes. And that's a book by Dr. Lex Brown James. It teaches, it's body part book. It is
Okay.
completely appropriate for kids, right? So for me, it's a question of why are you not having these conversations? So generally speaking, while I can say that, yes, start having the conversations as soon as possible, even before you have a kid, if you're, pregnant or what have you, part of the work that often needs to be done is on the self.
Yeah,
Why are you scared of children having this conversation?
right.
What about this feels like for some people, I know that they say, I want to protect their innocence. I want to, my job is to protect my child. And I usually push back with, why do you believe that a lack of information is protection? In what ways has a lack of information been protective for you? Because honestly, when we do that, it's more a conversation about power than it is protection,
Mhm.
right? I don't think that we actually know what the full meaning of protection is. To protect somebody, that means they must also be informed as to why you're doing what you're doing and the way that you're moving, right? They need to understand it. They also need to consent in some ways to it. But keeping children in the dark is not protective, because
Mhm.
what we know is that people who are most likely to harm someone sexually do so because the kid doesn't even know the name of their own body parts.
Correct.
So if you over here calling somebody's vulva and their vagina their purse, they tell you somebody touched their purse and you don't know if they mean handbag or not. Right? And if you told them that their purse is private, now some predator is there, and they're like, please don't touch my purse. The predator also doesn't know what they're talking about. That's one, they don't. But also number two, when a child says, do not touch my vulva, that tells the adult, this one knows their body parts. This one might get me in trouble, right? So I think that we confuse ignorance for innocence and say that we're trying to protect someone's innocence. For those who are parents of Black children, they would never say they wouldn't have a conversation with their kid about what it means to be and grow up Black in America. You have the conversation about what they should expect should a cop come their way. You have this conversation. And yet somehow with sex, with sexuality, mum's the word. Make it make sense. The math, the math is not mathing.
The math ain't math, and yeah, I,
It's
I
not.
I agree. Um, let me go pivot real quick. You mentioned a resource. Now, I have a daughter. She is now 27 years old. She's a whole adult. But I remember using the American Girl book to help her learn about her body and sexuality and all the things as she was growing up. Is there a book, an equivalent book for young boys and or for transgender youth?
There are lots of books out there these days. I would say that one of the best resources where you can find a lot of resources is Sex Positive Families.
Okay.
It is, when I say robust on the resources, I mean very robust. We're talking books, videos, webinars, all kinds of information is right there on that website. This is their specialty. And I would never want to take anything away from them. They do such splendid work in that area. And I like that they've amassed this beautiful library of resources. So that is usually where one of the first places I tell people to go. I'm like, go look, go see.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you said sex positive families. So is it sex positive families like .com, .org, something along those
I think
lines?
it's like .com.
Okay. All right, y'all. So Dr. Donna just gave you a resource, sexpositivefamilies.com. If you are trying to find resources to support you in having this conversation, that sounds like an absolutely incredible place to start. So start there. But start is the moral of our story. So
Yes.
Dr. Donna, I want to again go back to what I said, something that I said earlier, because I may need some education. I specifically talked about healthy ways to express your sexuality.
Mhm.
In your opinion, are there healthy and unhealthy ways of expressing sexuality, or perhaps informed, misinformed? Like, is there such a thing? Do I need to be educated? I could be wrong.
I like the way that when you reframed it, informed and misinformed, but I also like the healthy versus unhealthy, right? What is unhealthy for one may be perfectly fine and safe, sane, all that for somebody else. Where it comes to sexuality, oftentimes sexuality, sex and masturbation, they can be used as a way to sort of cope because of the building and the releasing of tension by way of orgasm, etc., can give you all those feel good hormones in your body, lowers cortisol and stress, which can help you to think more clearly about whatever your next course of action is. So there are definitely benefits to masturbation and benefits to having sex, um, even on just like the brain level. Whether or not something is healthy is dependent upon when you are. I like to say when you are, not where you are, because the when you are is very important to me. So for me, it's sometimes the thing that you're doing is healthy until it stops being effective, until it stops feeling healthy.
Gotcha.
In which case you may need to get another coping skill,
Hmm.
add another little something to the mix, remove something from the mix. And for some people, they find that they may have been using sex as a coping skill, and that it, one, stops feeling effective, and two, stops feeling healthy. So at whatever point it is that you're noticing that this is not good for me, that is the point where it becomes, I would say, unhealthy. But I can't dictate that because it's you, it's your body. I can't tell you what's healthy and not healthy for your body. Only you could tell me.
Yeah, I like that. Um, I can, in my mind, I can call up many different clients, but where it became unhealthy. And I think for me, the common factor in when it becomes unhealthy is when sex absent another factor to make it exciting, when it stops feeling good, like when you need something else, another level to make it exciting for you, then you have to sit down and figure out what's really going on. And for most people, that involves like power and control and things of that nature. Um, When you are doing your work, Dr. Donna, with people who come in specifically for sex therapy, what are some common themes that you experience?
As the therapist,
Yes.
um,
Like,
mostly
what are some of the common things that people come in for? So when a person comes in for
oh,
sex therapy, what brings them to see you? I'm sorry.
sometimes it depends on whether or not they came in as an individual or they came in as a couple. I find that when women come in, it is because the sex life that they have is subpar in some way, shape, or form, either something that they notice for themselves or something that it's like their partner sent them. Go to therapy because you're not doing a good job in this, which is quite ridiculous. Because usually what turns out there is that they are dissatisfied with their relationship, and that has led to a dissatisfaction within their sex life. Um, Sometimes people are coming to explore their own sexuality, as in they believe that they are attracted, they're same sex attracted. They may be attracted to a specific type or have some sort of a fetish or something that they want to further discuss and sort of be in space about. But where it comes to couples, it's usually a dissatisfying sex life that has been exacerbated by poor communication, or something of that nature. When it is men alone, which I do not get an abundance of, and I recognize that some of that is because of their own feelings of embarrassment and not being man enough. I get a lot of men who have some level of erectile dysfunction, or they feel like they are having issues with premature ejaculation. So those are the main two things that I get from men. That's what I, like, oh, I don't have no desire. That's what I mostly get from women. And where it comes to the couple, it's we have a dissatisfying sex life. Every now and then I do get kink couples, or those who are looking to open their relationship to be poly. Those are also very fun to sort of like explore. So earlier when you mentioned, those who play with power dynamics, BDSM type stuff, that is also perfectly healthy, sane, and normal, and is not necessarily indicative of anything else. It's just the ways in which we express, or in the ways that we have fun with ourselves and with others, and seek our pleasure just looks different.
Okay. So let me ask you about your community on Facebook, right? Free, Fabulous, and Fucked, and it is specifically for not just women but Black women. So
Yes.
when I look at the title and interrogate the title, it leads me to some assumptions. So you let me know the reasoning behind the particular group. But when I think about women and how women express themselves sexually, right? Sexuality, some women have sex out of obligation. Like they believe that this is something that they need to do to make sure that the man in their life is pleased, right? And when I hear free, I'm also aware that some women feel guilty if and when they have sex for pleasure. So when you created this particular Facebook group, were any of those the reasons why you opened a group, or is it deeper than that?
It is and is not deeper than that. So I was thinking about it. For me, the free is free from other people's expectations, other people's desire, other people's the limitations that people place upon our on our sexuality and the way that we're allowed to show up to truly be free. And to me, to truly be free, it requires examination. So I'm a person, I've never been good at small talk. It's not my forte. I can have a proper conversation, but I can't do small talk. So
Yeah.
for me, when I think free, I'm thinking about the types of conversations that we need to have about the way that white supremacist, cis hetero, patriarchy has impacted the way that we experience ourselves, the way that we
Yeah.
experience others, and the way that this delusion then continues to live on and thrive in our lives, and how getting free of that allows us more space to experience ourselves fully, which falls right into the fabulous, because It's hard to have self-esteem when you are part of the group that is never intended to have self-esteem.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel good about yourself, we have to consider what it is then that we expect and accept from the people who get to interact with us. And I say who get to because it's an honor to interact with us. It is an honor. And I think that that piece gets lost in the sauce because we've been told that we are not worthy in one way or another, right?
Yeah.
So the fabulous is examining self-esteem and the ways that it shows up. And I'm going to do a little bit more of that. I have a book coming out
Okay.
on self-esteem, specifically for Black women. So I'm very excited about that. And then, of course, the fucked is a little bit deeper than just having a fabulous sex life, right? For me, it's about how do you make your life orgasm?
Mm.
Right? Like woo, people be seeking their orgasms in the bedroom, and that's beautiful. And you should keep going, keep seeking it, right? Meditate and masturbate. But also, how do you make your life orgasm? Well, you probably make your life orgasm by being more free and feeling you're fabulous so that you can be fucked in the way that you want to be, not fucked over,
Right,
which is
right,
a little
right.
bit different.
I I'm stuck on the whole thought process of how do you make your life orgasm? That's deep. That's really, really deep because I feel like many of the conversations that I'm having with clients, and I work primarily with children and youth. I also have to work with adults, right? You cannot work with children and youth without supporting the adults who support them. But at the end of the day, what 95% of people are dealing with is exactly that, how to make their life orgasm, how to live a life where they are free of what other people say, where they are, living in their own truth, when they are unencumbered but by all of the things. Ultimately, the anxiety that you were talking about during COVID, the depression, all of that came about because we were afraid, fearful, scared, boxed in, right? But that really for especially for Black folks, people of color, like we stay boxed in. We stay, afraid to live out loud. Like the whole analogy that you were sharing earlier about having that conversation with our children when the cops are in your vicinity. I am certain that my Caucasian counterparts, when a cop passes them, their heartbeat does not go to racing. Mine's does. So that whole how do you make your life orgasm, that thing, that I love that. I need that t-shirt. I need that t-shirt. I need you to go ahead and create it and put it on your website so that I can buy it. I love the thought. How do we make our lives orgasm? That was beautiful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Um, are there age limits for the group? Because we're sharing this, there's going to be some teenagers. I do lots of workshops and groups with teenagers, high schoolers. Is there an age limit to the group?
Yeah, I like I'm 18 up,
Yeah.
mostly because I don't want no problems. I don't want nobody's mama cussing me out. So be the type of adult that is legally an adult to be in the group.
Amen. Amen to that. But you know what, Dr. Donna, we might need to have a conversation because I feel like we could do a dialed down, parent approved, I guess, version of that for youth, because I do think that our high school students in particular need to have this conversation as they transition to adulthood, just how to own who you are and not apologize for it, be okay with being you and allow your life to orgasm. And what does that look like? But we'll talk
I
about that.
agree.
We'll talk
I
about that.
definitely agree. And I want to say that there are some groups out there.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that I'm fully informed on what all the groups are because that would be a lot of proportions. But like I think about like advocates for youth.
Mhm.
I think about like Planned Parenthood. I think about these places and there are organizations that they already have the ear of youth and the approval of the parents. I think
Gotcha.
they just need to do more work and be more intentional about also adding the sexuality component. But you'll find that a lot of people are very scared to have that conversation, because for too long, the idea has been that if you have the conversation, you're encouraging the
Mm,
sex that these kids are having, when it is literally the opposite.
right.
If you're having the conversation, you are taking all the mysteries out of sex.
Right.
And if you're taking all the mystery out of sex, they can wait,
Yeah.
right? But I don't think that we're often ready to have that part of the conversation, because funnily enough, while we are talking about, like, sometimes I feel like people are still talking about like sex crazed teenagers. I'm like, sex is actually is on the decline. It's not on the incline. People are having less sex than they've ever had.
Wow, now that's a statistic that I'm sure people weren't prepared for. I wasn't. I didn't know that. I did not know
I
that.
think that people are more stressed than they have ever been, and that they don't know how to cope, and that sex is not something that, while sex can be a great coping method for those who are able to engage in it, where it comes to the things that accelerate us into wanting to have sex and hit the brake, stress hits the brake. So for many of us, we're not feeling more frisky because we're stressed out. We're stressed out, so we're not frisky at all. Right. And I like to believe that, like, on the larger scale, where they're talking about like declining birth and all that, I'm like, well, people have to have sex in order to make babies, and people who are stressed have less babies, and especially if they're stressed about money, because babies cost money and they take time, which we don't have maternity and paternity leave as a requirement in this country. So it's kind of hard to then tell people, you want to simultaneously tell them to go have babies, but we're not going to give you no money, and your job might not be waiting for you when you get back.
Wow.
Like, come on, get out of here.
Wow. Wow. I heard you mention Advocates for Youth earlier. Is that the group that has the 3 R's curriculum?
I don't know.
Okay. I'll look that up. So when three R's for the Miss Dr. Kenya audience, that is a free curriculum that talks about rights, responsibilities, and there is another R that I cannot think of, but it's ultimately a free curriculum that also talks about ways that you can address sex and sexuality and health in general, boundaries, all the things, and it goes from kindergarten to high school, but it is meant for teachers. However, as it relates to resources, if you just want to know how to start the conversation, that may be another resource that you can utilize.
But there's so many easy ways to start a conversation about sex. There are
I
so many easy ways. Like, I think about, number one, like, for super young children, read a book. Readabo. Okay. So these are my eyes, this is my nose, this is my vulva, this is my toes, right? So now you're having a conversation about body parts. There's a book on consent. So now you could talk about safe touch, unsafe touch. There are books by Roby Harris. And when I say books, plural, I mean, like, it's not the stork is one of the books. Perfectly Normal, about bodily functions. There are multiple books just by this one author that are great ways to have the conversation. As your child gets older and you're watching what they're watching, talk about the themes and what you're seeing. Like, well, what is this telling us about what a healthy friendship looks like, a healthy relationship looks like, right? I think right now I feel like there's been this resurgence of people watching like older TV shows, like newer generations being introduced to things that we used to watch in the 90s,
Yeah.
right? Like Family Matters, for example. In a lot of ways, Steve is a poster boy for someone who ignores someone else's consent,
Mm.
right? Like, please leave me alone is constantly needing to be said for him to leave somebody alone.
Yeah.
And that you are allowed to have affections and want to place those affections upon whomever you would like to, but if they do not want to receive it, then you get to do it secretly in the presence of only you. So I think that using television, using music, like, let's examine these lyrics. You're singing this song all extra loud. Let's look at these lyrics. What they saying, right? which is something that I have been doing recently with the Free Fabulous and Fuck community. I call it "It's Not That Deep." I just pick a song at random, usually something that people are talking about or that I'm liking in the moment, or that I think it's really got some good stuff. And we'll talk about like the themes of sex, of relationships, of love that are within the song and how they apply or don't apply to us. So we did the first one with the song Jolene by Beyonce's Jolene, not Dolly Parton's Jolene.
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
we looked at it, and there's some other songs that I'm gonna allow people to start making suggestions. But I'm just like, let's have these conversations. Let's look at these lyrics because you're singing it all extra loud, which means you're telling it to yourself. So, and you know, some of them become like little earworms and get all up in your head. So let's have a conversation about that as well.
Yeah, what are you telling yourself through music? Now I want you to know that you just killed everybody's perception of Family Matters, okay? And what they think about Steve Urkel, which you are absolutely right. He was on Laura's head. He liked her a lot and did not leave her alone, even though she asked for it time after time after time again. And to your point, he had to, I'm going to say, create some type of scheme in what did he call himself? Steve Urkel, right?
Yeah,
And this
Stefan Urkel.
Urkel. But that's very true. Thank you for that perspective. But you
I know it's
did,
not a popular perspective because in the end, Steve and Laura, you know, they do what they do. But for me, I'm like, it was kind of cringe watching it growing up. Not to say that he wasn't a decent guy, but at the same time, I'm just like, the nice guy is not often nice for you, right? I think that sometimes we get stuck in there. And on top of that, I feel like the nice guy trope is actually a way to say that this person is not as loud in the way that they abuse and misuse their relationship with women or mischaracterize their relationship with women as others. And so we think that makes them better. That's not true. They're just dangerous in a different way.
yeah, but still dangerous, but still dangerous. That's a great segue to my next question. Or to the next topic I wanna address. So it goes along with consent, right? But
Mhm.
specifically to the point that you just made, I feel like we really, really need to educate our children and our youth on what consent is, because I think that non-forceful no's, like a straight up no, don't touch me, I'm swinging if you do, that's what people are looking for to respect people's boundaries. They don't take a no, with a little giggle and a little smile. They don't take that seriously. But no is no, right? So how do we help our young people understand how to respect people's boundaries, even if it is packaged nicely? It is still a boundary that has been communicated to you, and you need to respect it. How do we help our young people make that shift?
We make our adults do it first. I think it's rather bold of adults to be like, well, how come you can't accept anybody's no? How come you can't? Your kid says no. Your kid says not yet. And you say, go hug grandma. I don't want to hug grandma. Do it anyway. What? Go kiss grandpa. I don't want to kiss grandpa. Go do it anyway. What? We are constantly teaching children not to honor their boundaries, not to hear that consent can be overridden by someone who is in a position of power. We continually say that, and then we get mad when they practice the same thing that we taught them.
Wow.
Again, the math. It's not mathing. So if you want to teach a child, then you don't say it out your mouth. You work it with your body,
Say that one
right?
more time. Say that one more
You
time.
work it with your body.
Yes.
So you can't just talk the talk. You actually have to walk the walk. You are supposed to be a living, breathing demonstration of the thing that you are asking for. You're asking for them to honor consent among each other while you dishonor them all the time, especially around Thanksgiving and Christmas. So
My
I'm just
God.
like, You've taught them that their boundaries, that their no will not be heard. And furthermore, that it is silly for them to have a no, and then are upset that they don't hear other people's no. Because your kid gave you their no nicely, without vitriol. They gave it to you in socially acceptable ways, and you bypassed it. You bypassed it. And then we want them to have learned how to pick up on what someone else is putting down when they putting it nicely. Come on.
Geez Louise, now let me say that I know that really, really hit for a lot of people, but you have to stop and breathe through your discomfort and really, really pay attention to the message.
Yeah, because when you hear something that you don't want to, the cognitive dissonance will turn off your critical thinking. That is what what's her name? Jasmine says on most of her videos. And I'm turn it back on. Be
Yes.
in the discomfort. Where in your body are you feeling the discomfort based off what I said? Look at the ways in which we have continued the patterns of ignoring someone's consent that we got when we were kids. This is going to be further hard for people who are Black women. It's going to be further hard for Black women because Black women, we're said that our consent has simply never mattered in anybody's equation, right? It's part of the reason why when Black women come forward with allegations about rape, no one believes them. Because we've been having these titles bestowed upon us when we're children, that you are a fast Black girl. Like, you fast. Why? Because regular body parts decided to grow? Because that's usually when they start getting dubbed fast. When the breasts come in, when the hips come in. And we say that, well, you got them hips, you must be having sex. Like, that's how it works. There are many a hipless woman having as much sex as possible, hoping that the hips will come in, and they won't. And they won't. So I don't think that sometimes we recognize the ways in which we are perpetuating, and we have not broken intergenerational curses. We're giving it to them, saying we want something different, but doing the same shit.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, well, ain't that the definition of insanity? Say, doing the same thing time and time again, expecting different results? Is that how it works? Give me a break.
Yeah, so when we think about having this conversation with our children, what I'm hearing is several different things. First and foremost, you have to be in open, honest dialogue with yourself about how you are showing up in the world, some of your own trauma, some of your own concerns that are preventing you from being able to sit with the discomfort that you're having as you approach a conversation about sex and sexuality with your child, with your youth. You have to be open and honest with yourself about why you aren't hearing your child as your child communicates certain things to you. So the first thing you have to do, it sounds like, and Dr. Donna, I'm gonna pivot back to you, as an adult, is make sure you're doing your work. Make sure you're doing your work. Dr. Donna, what are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. You've got to make sure you're doing your work, that you are examining yourself, and also consider the ways in which you have already erroneously taught that consent doesn't matter. Can I have some of your chips? No. Now you taught the child that they stingy because they said no. Someone asked the question. The answer was no. And instead of honoring the no, we tell them that they're selfish and they don't share. Share your toys. I don't want to share my toys. Well, you're selfish and you're stingy. Nice boys and girls share their toys, right? We are constantly teaching against consent, and then are wondering why they're not learning towards consent. I would also argue that, you know who understands consent most? Kids already understand it. It's adults that don't. Because adults are still trying to play the niceties, right? We've been taught the niceties, how to be nice people, not kind, nice. Niceness requires you to give up of yourself even when you don't have it to give to other people. Even when you don't want to. You want some chips? You offering the chips, you don't want anyone to have them, but it's a nicety to offer. Even though the kindest thing to do would have been like, I don't want to share this, so I'm not going to even bring it into the conversation. That would have been the kind thing to do. Kindness requires knowledge of self and honoring of one's boundaries. We dishonor our own boundaries. We dishonor our own consent and think that we're teaching consent to anybody. And I'm always flabbergasted at the audacity, the unmitigated gall to believe that you're going to teach someone something that you refuse to practice, something that you refuse to do. You want your kid to read more books? Why don't they watch you read a book? You say you don't want the kids to be in front of the TV, parked in front of the TV all day and night. You're parked in front of the TV all day and night. I can tell you right now that my family, we are avid readers. And that is because my mother is an avid reader. I ain't never seen a woman try to read a book on a commercial break. Have you? Seen somebody try to read on a commercial break? And then when TV's got the pause button, she finished the commercial break, pushed pause on the TV, and then like, I just want to finish this chapter. All it did was mean that when me and my sisters, when we went to the library, we were that family checking out 75 books at a time.
Yeah.
Trading them back and forth among each other, having our own little book club among the family members, where we also got to talk about relationships and expectations and self-esteem and sex.
Yeah.
Though, granted, more of those conversations happened as I became an adult because, you know, I got these degrees and I decided that I should use it at home too. So I'm saying that everything always has said lead by example, that children learn in a variety of ways, but they very rarely learn from do as I say.
Yes.
So people will do as you do.
Yes.
So if you want them to know consent deeply and to honor it, then you have to also be willing to love it deeply and honor it. Consider the ways that you've dishonored it. Apologize for how you have messed up. Let it be a part of the discourse in your family and work to move forward accordingly. My mama stopped putting me on the phone with people I didn't want to talk to. Right? Like when she understood consent the way I understand consent, because it'd be like, well, your uncle's on the phone, he wants to talk to you. I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody. Before it just, well, take the phone, Jerry. Like, please take the phone. And eventually it got to a space of, well, she doesn't want to talk. Right? And sometimes she would pretend I wasn't even in the room. She's just like, oh, well, let me see if she's here. Like, you want to talk to your uncle? Just like, she's just like, oh yeah, she's not here.
Right.
And I love the ways that she has learned to honor me and to protect me. And I don't know that we are interested in honoring and protecting the children in our lives, especially if we are so mired in the idea of having power over them.
Yeah.
There's no honor. There's no honor there, where you just want to exercise your power because you think you know better, because you're older. And just being older doesn't bring wisdom. It just brings age. Wisdom is knowledge applied. What do you know about yourself? What do you know about your kid? And how are you applying that knowledge? And I find that a lot of us, we misapply it. We don't apply it. We don't care to know them. We care to know them as close. We care to know them that is as close to us as it can be. And we want to cultivate and culture and groom them to be more like what we were, so that we can fix our mistakes through their youth.
Okay, I'm quiet right now. Because I don't disagree. I mean, ultimately, we teach our children about all things related to life based upon how we show up in the world, right? So at the end of the day, we should, as parents, as caring adults, our ultimate goal should be to model what it is we expect from our children and youth. And here's the thing. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to acknowledge where you've made a misstep. So if you are learning and growing, say that. Say, I apologize. Say, I understand better now. and make the pivot. Dr. Donna, I mean, I could talk to you for hours. This was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with the Miss Dr. Kenya audience. I want to stop and give you an opportunity to share with the folks like how they can reach out to you. Perhaps they may find themselves needing some therapy, where they can find your products, how they can join your group. Tell us about all Dr. Things, Dr. Donna. How can we keep in contact with you?
Well, you can keep in contact. Most of my information is on donnaoriolo.com. You can follow me on Instagram specifically at Dr. Donna Oriolo. If you sign up for the newsletters, you get all the news. You'll be some of the first to know. Excuse me. The first to know are really the people in the Free Fabulous and Fun group, but everybody else should be second to know. So that's how you can find me.
Okay, again, thank you so much. We will be sharing your information at the end of this video as well, so that people can write it down and follow you. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining us. To the Miss Dr. Kenya audience, I hope you have gotten something important out of this conversation. If nothing else, I want you to walk away with the idea that vulnerability is key, right? It's okay not to know. Own your mistakes, and be open to other ideas. Be open to other ideas. And with that, Dr. Donna and I say, have a great day.